This morning, our Way to a Wonderful Life message is soul power, the power of the soul. Soul power, or the power of the soul. And we know that the faith is the strength of the soul inside, and lost is the person without it. That faith is the strength of the soul inside, and lost is the person without it. And as we read in the ancient scriptures, I can do all things through Christ which strengthens me. We know that this Christ is that part of God within each and every one of us, that part of God intelligence, God power, God spirit. And so we know that nothing can disturb us when we're in tune with the infinite good, tune with God's spirit, God's power, God's intelligence. And we can know always and in all things that all things work together for our good. This morning we have some words here from the great Eric Butterworth. This is from his book, Life is for Loving. Life is for Loving. And you can find this little book on Amazon.com or BarnesandNoble.com. He writes, Francis J. Gable, who was a Unity minister, tells of an experience in his own life when he was a traveling salesman. It was one of those rare revelations of transcendent significance that came from following a flash of inner guidance. Now, we know every little flash of inner guidance that comes to our intuition, our intuitive mind, is coming from the Spirit. So it was one of those rare revelations of transcendent significance that came from following a flash of inner guidance. He was passing hurriedly through a train station bent on catching the 840 to Chicago when he was confronted by a crippled beggar sitting with his pencils and cup. Following his charitable instinct, he dropped a coin in the cup and hurried on past. Suddenly, a few steps farther on, he stopped short and pondered the significance of his act. He turned and addressed the man, saying, I want to apologize to you. I treated you like a beggar, but you are really a merchant. He said, I want to apologize to you. I treated you like a beggar, but you are really a merchant. At that, he stooped and took a pencil and then hurried on to catch his train. It was a spontaneous thing, but with implications much more far-reaching than at the time he realized. He was traveling through that same station 2 years later. As he passed this same spot, he heard a voice calling out, Hey, mister. He turned and recognized this same crippled man, now seated on a high stool, working as the proprietor of a bustling newspaper stand. The man said, You probably don't remember me, but I will never forget you. You treated me as a person, and for the first time in my life, I realized that I could make something of myself. I have now found a way to be self-supporting, but most of all, I now have self-respect. In a moment, Gable turned from love to loving, from charity to involvement, and a life was transformed. That's from the great Eric Butterworth's book, Life is for Loving. Now, this story has implications for all of us. It is a reminder to us to be involved in life. To be involved is to give more thought to what comes to us and more thought about what it is that we do. The man selling pencils came to Francis Gable in consciousness. In consciousness, he had a lesson for him, a lesson that would touch his soul, that is, touch something higher in him than mere charitable giving. And at the soul level, Francis Gable was receptive to the lesson. And I would imagine that this same type of occurrence happens for all of us at some time or another, but for many of us, we need to slow down and take the time to get involved in what we are doing. As we understand that all is consciousness, we understand that we are always in control of our lives. In the Bible, the word soul is used instead of consciousness, but it means the same thing. And we know that consciousness is where the power of God works in our life. This inherent soul power determines everything. But it is up to us to take conscious control, knowing that we have the power within us to change our experience, and we have the power within us to change whatever it is that's going on in our life that we no longer want to be a part of. Each and every one of us must consciously make contact with this soul power within, and we must do it consistently and persistently. Be still and know that I am God. We find our power in the stillness, but the stillness will elude us unless we consistently practice being still. And as we do, we will realize that this power greater than we are is at work within us and will work for us, as us, and through us to know and to do that which we give it definite direction to know and to do. And we do this by our choice. God has given us the free will to choose, but we must choose definitely and sometimes specifically if we're to get the good results, the answers to our prayers that we seek. As we remind ourselves of our principle, all is God and all is good, we can know that there is good for us in every situation we find ourselves in. Just like in the case of Francis Gable, but for many of us, we give up our power by not taking control of the things that we experience, or we just don't give them the proper amount of thought. The thought. It's that not letting ourselves think about what we're doing, think about what's going on, that causes us to just miss so much in life. For many of us, we give up our power by not taking control of the things that we experience. We just think, oh, these are just things that happen to everybody, and this is just the way life is, rather than saying, no, I'm choosing a greater idea for myself, and I'm choosing to follow that greater idea into my ideal life experience that I have in mind for myself, because that ideal that I have in mind for myself can only come from one source. That's the mind of God, which is spirit, and that spirit of God moves through each and every one of us. That's why I can do all things through Christ. In other words, that part of God in me every day in everything that concerns me. Will this make all things perfect according to our human understanding? No, not always. But it will make all things perfect on the soul level of our lives. No matter what we may desire to heal, we can use this power to find the good in everything. We can find a greater health, a greater wealth, a greater experience in our relationships, a greater success in our careers. But some of the most challenging experiences have brought us the greatest benefits in life. Why? Because in order to heal things, sometimes they have to be revealed to us so we know what it is that we must heal. What is our thought about our health? What is our thought about health in general? Do we focus on all the diseases of the world? Do we focus on the things that people tell us are hereditary diseases? Do we think because our aunt or uncle or our third and fourth cousin from a mama's side had a disease, so therefore we're subject to that disease too? What is it that goes through our mind? What is it that brings us into that feeling of being together, to being okay with life and okay with that truth that all things work together for my good? Do we believe that? Can we say all things work together for my good and trust that the God power within us, that principle of God, that love and law, that love which makes everything come to our mind as a good desire or as a good thought or as an ideal situation, and that law of God which makes everything possible? With God, all things are possible. Jesus told us that. Do we believe all things are possible? And we won't know until we get the opportunity to see that it does. And sometimes that opportunity comes to us because things come to us that we know that we must do something about them. We must think another way about them. We must find in our mind a solution. And we know that in mind, everything has a solution. Just like in mathematics, every mathematical problem has its solution in mathematics. So every problem with faith, every problem with belief, every problem with it's done unto me as I believe is found in mind. What am I believing? If what I'm believing is what I'm seeing in my life, if that's the measure of my belief and my faith in the goodness of God, then that's all that I will get. Jesus said, all that the Father hath is mine, and it's the Father's good pleasure to give to you. So we must tell ourselves, it is the Father's good pleasure to give to me, so what is it that I want the Father to give me? Can I see it? Can I be it? Can I have it? It's up to me. It's up to me to decide. It's up to me to choose it. It's up to me to keep faith with it. It's up to me to say, yes, this is mine. I claim this as my good. Ask and you shall receive, Jesus said, and that ask in the Aramaic language of Jesus meant to claim it. Claim it. But first we got to name it. We can't claim something in the abstract. We must claim something specific, something definite. Let's look at these words from the mystical Ernest Holmes. This is from his book, This Thing Called You. He writes, "Today I recognize the abundance of life. I animate everything in my experience with this idea. I remember only the good, I accept only the good, I expect only the good, and the good is all that I shall experience. I give thanks for this good that is coming to me in an ever-increasing volume. I say to my mind, there is good enough to go around, enough to share and to spare. I do not withhold that good from myself or from anyone else, but proclaim that spiritual abundance is forever flowing to each and to all as daily supply." Excuse me. Now we look at those words and we see that daily supply is coming to us from that one source, which is God. God is the idea. God is the idea behind everything that we see, behind every material thing. God was behind the idea of the shirt that you have on and the blouse that you have on. God was the idea behind whatever it is that you're going to do today. That idea first came through the mind of God, and then it entered into the mind of man, who accepted it as an idea and put the materials together to make that shirt, to make that blouse, or to do those things that we come into contact with today, to build houses, to build lamps, to build all these things, to discover electricity, to discover the science that's necessary to have telephone communications. All these things came from this all-intelligence, which is God. And man has still got so much to discover and so much to do and so much to be and so much to have, because this infinite presence, this infinite intelligence, this infinite good is always unfolding in a greater way. And so that unfoldment is not complete. It's not complete. We still have more to unfold, but we have to stop and think about what it is that's going on around us. Think about what it is that we do. Think about how it is that we come into contact with the people in our life experience, because everybody in our life, whether we like them or don't like them, everybody is there for a reason. Everybody is there to prompt us, to push us a little bit, to discover something more, something greater, something better, and to realize within our own power of our own soul just how powerful our soul is when it's connected, when it's in tune with the infinite nature of God. Let's go back to that simple story from Eric Butterworth's book, Life is for the Loving. Life is for the Loving. Once again, you can buy that book on BarnesandNoble.com or Amazon.com. We'll go through this little story again because it's got a profound message to it, a profound lesson for us. And for those who tuned in late, I want to make sure you all have a chance to hear the entire story. Eric Butterworth writes, Francis J. Gable, who was a Unity minister, tells of an experience in his own life when he was a traveling salesman. This is before he became a minister, I guess. It was one of those rare revelations of transcendent significance that came from following a flash of inner guidance, that flash that moves through our intuitive mind, we should say. He was passing hurriedly through a train station bent on catching the 840 to Chicago when he was confronted by a crippled beggar sitting with his pencils and cup. Following his charitable instinct, he dropped a coin in the cup and hurried on past. Suddenly, a few steps farther on, he stopped short and pondered the significance of his act. He turned and addressed the man, saying, "I want to apologize to you. I treated you like a beggar, but you are really a merchant." At that, he stooped and took a pencil and then hurried on to catch his train. It was a spontaneous thing, but with implications much more far-reaching than at the time he realized. He was traveling through that same station 2 years later. As he passed this same spot, he heard a voice calling out, "Hey, mister." He turned and recognized the same crippled man who was now seated on a high stool working as a proprietor of a bustling newspaper stand. The man said, "You probably don't remember me, but I will never forget you. You treated me as a person, and for the first time in my life, I realized that I could make something of myself. I have now found a way to be self-supporting, but most of all, I now have self-respect. In a moment, Gable, the minister Gable, turned from love to loving, from charity to involvement, and a life was transformed. So what did he become involved with? He became involved with the idea that there was something greater going on than the mere actions that he was being a part of. So he involved himself in that something greater, and in that realization of that something greater, he gave this man the gift of respect. He gave this man the gift of hope. He gave this man the gift of thinking something different about himself than perhaps he had ever thought before. So let's just realize for ourselves that there's something within all of us that's seeking that greater idea, and as we find that greater idea, then we shall cleanse the windows of our mind, and so that our mind can become a mirror reflecting that inspiration from the Most High, and let in those ideas, those flashes through our intuitive mind, just as the minister Gable did, so that we can realize something more about those things that we're doing, to realize something more. That's why Jesus said, turn the other cheek. He didn't say turn the other cheek so that somebody could smack you on the other side of your face, but turn the other cheek means to look at every situation in a different way. So if you feel frustrated or depressed, or you feel like you're getting nowhere, look at it a different way. Look at it from an objective perspective and see yourself in the situation the way God sees you. Remind ourselves, we must remind ourselves every day that we are created in the image, likeness of God. That means we have a power, we have an intelligence, and we have a spirit within us that can move us through all manner of things that we come into contact with, that we're confronted with in our lives. We have a power that most of us have used very little of because we haven't been confronted with that many things to strengthen us. But we know that there's not only do we have a power, we have an intelligence that most of us have not fully awakened to yet. And we have a spirit within us, a spirit that some people call the Christ. It's that part of God within us that each and every one of us can use to strengthen ourselves, to strengthen our mind, our heart, and our soul, to strengthen our zeal for life, our interest in life, our enthusiasm in life, and start feeling a greater joy in life. And we can find this strength in quietness and confidence as we be still and we let God in. And then we will find that the faith is the strength of the soul inside of us. The faith is our strength of the soul inside, and lost is the one without it. Lost is the one without it. So we can know that each and every one of us have that strength of the soul, that part of God within us. We can think, we can analyze, therefore we have intelligence. We know we have intelligence, but we know that we have also not used all the intelligence that is ours to use. Most every one of us are walking around with something that we must realize more about for ourselves. Something more about our wealth, something more about our health, something more about our relationships, something more about all things. You know, people go through all manner of things in their mind first before they're even confronted with the actual situations, because so many times people walk around with assuming the negative, assuming things are wrong, when all they have to do is turn the other cheek, as Jesus said, and look at the situation in another way, or look up, as Jesus said, look up, not down. Don't look down where the problem is. Look up and know that you can't solve the problem at the level of the problem. So look up and let God fill your mind with the new idea. Let God fill your mind with the new way of looking at things, and have faith. Have faith. Faith is the strength of the soul inside, and lost is the one without it. We have a soul power. We have the power of our soul. Dr. Ernest Holmes tells us, quench not the spirit. Quench not the spirit. We are not to be ashamed of our trust in God, nor are we to deny the inner light, that light of the Christ within us that lights every person's reason, to the ultimate reason of all. Spiritual emotion is common to all people and is one of the ways through which the Spirit works. When this emotion is blocked, it hinders the currents of life from flowing, and the result is stagnation. That's from the mystical earnest songs, but the results are also dis-ease and ill health and sickness and illnesses of all kinds. It's also poverty and lack and financial struggle. It's also relationships that don't work. All manner of things happen when we forget that there's a power within us that's always seeking for us to choose the greater, choose the more, choose the things that bring joy in life. That the Spirit of God has clothed our spirit in human form. The intelligence of God has clothed us in human form so that God may enjoy this thing called life through us in a greater way. So our purpose begins with joy. Do we have a feeling of joy in life? Do we feel the joy? Today is the day the Lord hath made. Let's rejoice and be glad in it. We read in the Scriptures, but are we rejoicing with joy, or are we looking at everything around us as some kind of punishment, some kind of whatever it is, hell on earth, that we want to escape from? So today and every day, let us meet God in the silence of our mind. Let that power of our soul connect with that power of the greater soul, which is God. And let us get to know this power that is within us and within all of life. We can be still and we become that which we choose to be, to do, or to have. Let's see each day as a new day of experiencing God in a greater way by using the soul power that we already have. And as we do, we shall become more and more powerful in our expression of life, for that is the direction of the soul's journey. And so it is. Amen. Once again, I want to thank you for being with me today. It's been my great pleasure to have you, and I hope you join me for my next broadcast right here on WKDI AM 840.